economics was my background and has been huge in the research that I do, but writing is probably the dominant one. Whether it's communications or political science or whatever it is, just work on your writing if you want to do research, because that's going to be what gets somebody's attention versus if you turn in something that is almost unreadable.
So I was a technical communications major here at Northeastern, and with a focus on the healthcare side of things. So not writing software manuals, but writing like biomedical documentation and reports and clinical trial reports and things like that. And got a master in public health because it was such a flexible degree that it touches on so many different areas. There's a law piece to it, there's a technology piece to it, there's statistics, there's, it's a really broad degree. But through all of my training, writing is the core skill. And some of the classes I took at Northeastern were huge for that. Some of the rhetoric and composition coursework that I took here was really fantastic preparation for being able to construct a good paragraph. But beyond technical skill in writing, you have to be able to craft a message and very persuasive kind of a message for a lot of this kind of work. And even if you're not trying to persuade someone on a particular policy point, you want to persuade them that you know what you're doing, or you want to persuade them that that this is an important issue that you're addressing. So persuasion in writing is very, very important. Leadership is I think a skill to start building now. Being a leader in student organizations is really beneficial and helpful, I think. It gets you ready to sort of put yourself out there and take on challenges that come along. Those would be my top recommendations.
I went to a small liberal arts school in upstate New York called St. Lawrence University, and my technical major was called Global Studies. So it's kind of looking at governments in a global sense and kind of connecting the economy and government, and it's kind of a very tailored major. I would say for fundraising and for development, writing is huge. I think public speaking is really important and something that people should take in college. I think for fundraising, you really can do it. It's not really about your major, but it kind of is about your personality more and what you're interested in. So, to be honest, I think it could be anything. I mean, you could be a language major, you could be math. It doesn't matter. It's kind of your way of thinking of what interests you. And if you like talking to a lot of people, writing a lot of RFPs, kind of thinking critically and thinking outside the box, then you'd be a good fit.
Could you just explain RFP?
Oh, request for proposals. Sorry, it's when you're asking, when you're sending requests for money to funders, potential sponsors.
I think so. I was a graphic design art history major, so I'm so far away from where I started. But I always very attuned to what my interests were, and I think very much many years later they've kind of aligned. But I think that writing, and especially these days, writing emails are really important. A lot of my communication with faculty are through email, and you only have a couple shots with the faculty, because if you send a few and they, what is this, doesn't make sense, they're very, very busy. They will just not open your next few. And I feel that sometimes email is overlooked in terms of being professional and starting off with dear and sincerely and that kind of stuff. So writing is key. I think leadership is really important. I think working with teams, being able to be a leader, but also to facilitate everybody's participation or idea generation is really important. And I think, a good work ethic. It's very hard to get a job, and I think a lot of the environments are very demanding. Our environment's a lot of fun. We're all united in our ultimate mission, but we all work really hard.
LinkedIn. and groom your public profile online. your vanity page with your name, your Mendeley, your academia, your ResearchGate. I mean, all of the social but also professional kinds of things. Professional organizations is another that I would highly recommend. I have gotten so many great contacts through the American Public Health Association and Academy Health, which are the two that I belong to. The meetings are amazing. You get to read and learn all about all the top research that's going on in the field, and then just meet people and shake hands with them and talk to them and introduce yourself. Perfect your 30-second elevator pitch, your 30-second summary of who you are and why you're interested in talking to the person that you're talking to. And then do that online as well. Make sure you have an online version somewhere, some kind of paragraph that summarizes what you are, who you are.
Caroline hit on it just a second ago. People like to talk about themselves and what they do. So email them and just say, hey, could I come in for 20 minutes? Be aware of their schedule. Don't take too much time. Be aware of ask them if they have busier times of the year, like academics. You probably don't want to catch them around finals time. You know this, you're on that schedule right now, but think about if they're a legislator, when is their busiest time, try to avoid that, find another time that might work for them to meet with people. Just go in, make sure you've done your research, you know what they do, why you're interested to talk to them, and then just go in and spend 20 minutes and end that time saying, would you recommend I speak with anybody else on this topic or issue? And usually people, if you come off as friendly, will say, oh yeah, I have 2 or 3 friends that I'm happy to introduce you over email, or here's their email. Just give them drop them a line and tell them, drop my name and they'll let you in or something like that. It's a good way to go about doing it.
I think finding a common ground with someone too. So, I mean, it sounds silly, but look at what your older siblings or your parents' friends do. See if they work for companies that you might be interested in. It's always helpful. Look for people within the Northeastern network because you have something in common right off the bat. Someone who was maybe on the team, like a sports team with you, or did something like that. So if you have that common ground, shoot them an email, send them a message on LinkedIn. It's pretty easy to kind of find people that way. And people do. They love to talk about what they do, especially if they love it. So
I would say also perfect your elevator pitch about yourself, but also think of if you have 2 minutes with somebody, make sure you're asking the right questions, or good questions, or questions that will really help you shape what you're going to do next, or learn something about the industry or their position. I also think volunteering, if there's something that you specifically want to do, don't wait around for a paying job if you can. It doesn't have to be full-time, it could be a couple hours volunteering for something. It looks great on your resume, but it gives you real experience. I'm always looking for someone who has some kind of real experience. It sets you apart because you just learn so much from doing that job, but also interacting with the people in that office or your team members.
And use your January break or Thanksgiving even to go in and spend a couple of days somewhere or spring break. Oh, sorry.
They're back like January.
Anyways, don't just wait for the summer. Like if you can find other times to go in and spend a week even somewhere, that gives you a good sense for an office, what they do.
Depends on the level. I think for the BA level people, they apply to RTI. And unfortunately, the process is so rigid that there's absolutely no leeway in terms of if you gave me your resume, I would just have to say, I'm sorry, I can't do anything with this. You have to go online and put in the application stuff online because I can't even, I wouldn't even know how to get your resume to the right people. It's ridiculous. But, and they would say, he has to go through the online thing, So, for junior level, it's recruiting. Internships, we do have interns that come, and those people have an inside track. So your internships are so important, or your work study. For senior level people, it's a different story. I think, at that level, people kind of network and find a lot of positions that way, just through, it's not even a posted job. It's just somebody says, "Oh, you're great, come work for us."
In my organization, it's almost exclusively networking. we don't tend to we'll post internship stuff, but other than that, it's word of mouth for the most part. Even at some of the larger organizations that I've been at, that's often the case. Even if they have a formal process, there's usually a kind of, oh, so-and-so knows so-and-so, they recommend this recent graduate, or they really have an interest area in this policy issue, and so they end up hiring around the formal process. So you just gotta ask around, see who your parents know, ask your friends here what their parents do if they're in a certain issue area that maybe you're interested in.
MassInc is the same way. With 15 people, we just don't have the capacity to really read through so many resumes. So we do post opportunities online, but especially for internships, we really take the time to look through who's submitting. We have a great relationship with the Northeastern co-op program, so we're very, very lucky in that respect that we know when we get resumes from you folks, they're all going to be good. For more junior level staffers, you know, like when I started out, I was an intern and then got an email about a year and a half later that something opened up within the organization. So internships are important, and just reaching out. I mean, everyone at our organization likes to talk about what they do and likes to talk with people who are interested in it. So even if there isn't something posted, it certainly doesn't mean there isn't something available maybe down the line. So it's about networking and not necessarily just sending your resume.
So Harvard, so academic, so for the center on the research side, there's an academic structure. So the fellows are coming because they're doing research or they're a postdoc or a graduate student, and that's kind of their track. But on the staff side, we're a small organization, and we get lots of resumes unsolicited, and we try our best to look at everybody, and maybe I'll talk to people on the phone, but we just get so many, it's hard to actually see people. But we do post a few positions. We just hired a communications manager, and I must have gotten 300 resumes, but they all go through the Harvard HR, and different, you know, people, you can request that everything is forwarded on to you, or they'll do the first screening. But there's a lot of good candidates out there, and we're looking for a communications manager to do some writing. So that person who we ultimately hired was really the best writer. But in addition to that, they have those other skills of, you know, working in a group, good work ethic, that kind of stuff. So the culture at the center, yes, every, I would say organization is different, and there are several research centers at Harvard and also at the Kennedy School, and they all are different, and I think part of that is just related to their mission. Ours is to end poverty. It's a very lofty goal, but there are ways that we kind of break that down, and that's how our center is structured. But we're a research organization, so there are a lot of fellows, postdocs, doctorate students, in addition to the faculty. So there's kind of a collegial environment, a little bit informal in terms of the way we all appear and might interact, but at the same time, because of where we are, there are, you know, very senior people walking around, or you know, government officials or presidents from other countries. So you know, it can change on a dime. That's kind of fun. The culture is also very business-like in that it's very fast-paced. We're not an endowed center. We're a small staff. We're all pretty experienced, and we're very focused on raising money. So for some of the teams, it's a lot of federal money, NIH money, NSF money. Those take a team of people to get the award, but then also to manage it after. So that's a huge process, and that's very serious because there are certain criteria. Then there are those of us like myself who are looking for gifts and building long-term relationships, and that's just a completely different process. That's kind of coming in and talking to the faculty members about what type of research they want to do, and then going out and thinking, okay, what types of partners do we want, who do we want to ask for money, and then building that relationship. The center has a long history, but the current history is relatively short. So there hasn't been a lot of funding. So the other part to that is we are a small staff, so how do you manage a small staff of people who are highly motivated but working very hard? and there's no one to pass the work off to. So that's where, you know, a culture of trusting everybody that you work with and doing a good job and really working hard helps.
But just briefly, I mean, I think it's a great question about where your funding comes from and how it dictates your work. I mean, I think, Lisa, you can speak to this, but if you're working for CMS, they're largely dictating to you what they would like you to look at. Or, I mean, you're working with them on certain projects. You know, we're trying to look at health disparities, and here's how we're going to tackle it. You know, others, so there's the kind of government contracts. Others will go out to do a consulting gig with a private company, and they often will have kind of thought process. Sometimes your individual donors will say, I want to look at this particular issue, and I'm going to give you money just to look at this one issue, and I'm going to tie it to this. Sometimes it's foundations that do the similar thing. You know, one of the things that Pioneer is a little bit different in this way is that we don't do consulting gigs, we don't work with governments, and all of our donors who give money can't put strings on it. They can put some, like we need to tell them what we're doing with it, report back, you know, that sort of stuff. But as far as the design of the project, that's totally up to us. And so that will largely dictate how you set your research agenda and how much reporting back you have to do, or how many presentations, or how many times you have to change the design of the project based on who your client is.
Especially coming from MassInc and being a nonpartisan independent organization, how we structure our fundraising is really, you know, we look back at our mission statement, which is looking at the growth and vitality of the middle class in Massachusetts, and then kind of determining what that is. So is it an education project? Is it a healthcare project? Developing, you know, coalitions of people, advisors, and then going and seeing, you know, who makes the most sense to reach out to. So is it a national foundation? Is it a family foundation? Is it a small, you know, corporate sponsor? You know, are there individuals interested? And then really going from there. So I think with a lot of these projects, especially, you know, at MassInc, it's kind of figuring out what works with your mission statement, developing a strategy and a fundraising strategy, which I think is very often lost. You know, that part of working at a think tank is you've got to raise the money to do the work, and then going from there and developing these networks of people, not only for money but for advice, editing. It's kind of an ongoing process.
It's $1 million question.
It's very hard. For some of our research teams, it's very easy because when they put together a trial, you know, they've got certain success measurements that they're trying to achieve. In general, it is really hard. I'm just thinking about, so policymakers, for example, so they're our #1 prime audience, but we're talking globally. So, so how do we track that they're getting our research? Well, one is our website, the internet, the traffic, knowing exactly who we're reaching and who's responding back. I mean, it seems kind of silly to talk about it in a way, but that whole communication piece is very, very important, and it is a way to measure how you're reaching those policymakers, because they're not part of a trial, they're not part of a test. It's very difficult. But then the other thing is we're asked to engage with many governments. We don't, you know, we're independent. All our research is a public good. We can't do any consulting work. So part of the measure of success is who we're talking to and how open they are to implementing some of the things that we're doing. So it's very, you know, there aren't numbers to that, but we see just in terms of who's reaching out to us and what our teams are doing. And I'm just thinking about one particular team in particular. But that's a very difficult question, especially for what we do, because the research that we're doing is very different depending on the team.
Really is a lot about who picks up your stories, who picks up your research, who's citing you, who's contacting you. You can kind of get a feel in the office for when something, you know, a really hot button issue comes out, and you know, a policy brief or a white paper comes out, and when people are interested in it. So it is difficult to measure. I mean, you can look at websites, you can look at Twitter, you can look at, you know, who's talking about it, but you know, there are so many different elements that you just kind of get a feeling in a lot of ways.
My favorite one's going to be dying soon. Google Reader had to find a replacement. I'm going to use NetVibes, I guess, to follow all the millions of blogs I follow. I mean, it's a huge amount of reading to stay ahead of all the publications that are coming out, all the research that's being done. Huge job.
Yeah, I mean, I probably am on 10 to 15 more emails that come in the morning that aggregate. So finding those aggregator sites on whatever topic you're working on is really important, otherwise you're not going to be able to get that information. Blogs make it even tougher, can be a blessing and make it even tougher because it's so much more fragmented in finding your data, but it's just finding those aggregator sites that can help make that possible.
Right, so we do have these very dense, very informative research reports that we center around certain issues, but I think Commonwealth, what it does is it really brings it to the masses. So our circulation list, for example, goes to heads of healthcare, heads of education, all the folks up on Beacon Hill, City Council. We really try and circulate it. So again, it's really targeting the real thinkers and doers in Massachusetts. I think that again, it's all independent research. We have a team of journalists both at our offices as well as guest writers who really take what we do and take our mission and look at current events. We're doing a lot more investigative journalism now, which is really exciting, and kind of brings it to the masses. So you're not given a 50-page, 60-page research report. You're given a 6-page article that really encompasses, our mission statement, which is what it's all about. So I would say, especially for me, I personally am not a research person. It really helps us kind of embody our mission statement in an easier, more concise way in some ways. So, and it is available online and in print.
Actually, if I could just comment on that too. So we, there's incredible research going on at our center. And I know I work at the center, but I'm going to say that anyway. But the challenge when I got there 2 years ago was it was just within academia, and we were getting it out to some policymakers. But the team really needed to think about how do we translate the research that we're doing here and really make it usable, not only for policymakers, which are really our target audience, but also practitioners in the field, students, people that are really interested in, why are some countries growing and why others aren't, why is there global poverty? Because there's a ton of really interesting breakthrough research happening, but we can't get it out. And so we've actually spent a lot of time since I've been there really thinking through our website, the newsletters that we do, what other mechanisms, how do we get good writers on board that can actually translate some of this stuff into language that we can all really use. So the magazine really hits with me because I think that, when you're looking for a job, if you're a good writer, I spend most of my time writing, you don't have to just go to a newspaper or kind of traditional things, but researchers, they need someone to help translate their research. If you think creatively about your skills and where you could apply them, it's not always so obvious.
And a big role for social media or video, I think for a lot of organizations. So if you're interested in policy or research but have a skill set that isn't purely writing, I do think there's a huge opportunity there to translate.
Yeah, so that's probably a public, so that would be a different type of think tank where economic research, on one level, the very macro level, how do countries grow, why do some grow, why don't. One team, so that's one team, one line of research. The other team is very much on the delivery of social services. We're dealing with poverty, what are the challenges related to poverty, and how do we assist. It's a lot of healthcare, education, stovepipe, just kind of living in those types of conditions. And then there's a third team that deals with capable states and capable governments. So what is a capable state? And if there are good examples of a capable state somewhere else, what lessons are they learning? And how do you transfer that to another country, another system? So we don't necessarily deal with security, but I know that there are other think tanks that do. But then in terms of a very practical question, in terms of some of the research that we deliver and who makes those decisions, it's myself, the communications manager, and the ED in terms of our website, or are we going to publish something, what goes out. And that's kind of all overseen by the research director.
Just briefly on your first point, DC is probably your best place to look for think tanks. There is a annual worldwide ranking of think tanks and what they do, so you may want to start there. You may want to just Google national security or international security think tanks, and some in academia will pop up and others will pop up down in DC, so I'd recommend that. Just to your second question about who, for us, since we're a state level think tank, it's usually state policymakers, so either people who work in the bureaucracy or elected officials. But there is another role that some think tanks take, which is for us, we're often advocating for things that we know politically are not possible in the current environment. We're trying to lead to where we want to go. So we're usually 3 to 5 years ahead of where we think the political process is, and then it's a matter of getting thought leaders and the policymakers there. So others try to say we're going to play in this issue that's currently being debated, so we want to put out a research paper on gun control because we want to affect it right now. And others say, really, we realize what we're advocating is not going to happen for